A big thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's a very important event for us, our yearly, well, not just launch event, it's an event where we talk about our roadmap and where we're taking the Synology operating system and our other products. So, Nicole's already given you a good overview of the strategy. Now we're going to look a bit more in detail of how we're going to be achieving this. And notably, we're going to start in this session, next 40 minutes, by talking about our DSM operating system, Disk Station Manager, which powers all the great apps that allow you to transform your disk station into a private cloud. What have our engineers been working on? Deep machine learning, that's a very important technology. We want to make our apps even smarter. We're leveraging this. Second, we're a storage manufacturer, backup, disaster recovery, that's very important to us, so we'll see what's in the pipeline for enhanced data safety. And last, we'll have a part about hardware resilience and robustness, notably with a very key model that our engineers in HQ are working on, and which will be probably here in the early 2019. So before I carry on talking, we're going to take a quick look at what DSM 7 looks like. So here you've been able to see from the login all the way into the desktop and some of our key apps, CMS, Central Management System, Synology Drive. This is what it looks like. So first, you will probably find that if you're used to DSM 6, DSM 5, there won't be major changes. That's very important. We don't want to bring a new learning curve in. A lot of the changes are happening under the hood. So while we've refreshed the design, because a lot of businesses use DSM to share data with their client, it's more of a refresh on that area. It's really in terms of the responsiveness. Our DSM is a web-based operating system. That means that because it's web-based, it has to be extremely responsive, and we've worked on enhancing that. And also, a lot of hours by engineers have been spent reviewing everything to make it more interactive. Typically, the wizards, typically the display messages, the notifications. Again, those have been reviewed, and on a day-to-day basis, you'll just feel you'll be having a much more interactive experience. So really trying to aim for 0.1 seconds of responsiveness on the UI, and if you're even on a bad connection, well, you'll never have these moments where it hangs or you don't know what's happening. In terms of logging in, there's a very interesting new QR code portal. So what is the benefit of that? If you go to, go.synology.com, it'll bring you to a portal, and using our DS Finder app with its QR code scanner, it'll automatically log you in. Why would you, what is the benefit for that? Typically businesses, you might have multiple different passwords in your company for different services, and that's when employees will be writing them down on Post-its, which is never great for security. So that's really the idea behind it. Just play you a short demonstration. This is the portal, so go.synology.com. You open DS Finder and the QR code login. It's very simple. You scan the QR code, and that will automatically, on your web browser of the PC, take you to the login page and automatically log you in. So very convenient and making it very simple. While we're on the topic of mobile, that's something that where Synology has really pioneered. We were the first NAS manufacturer back in 2019 to introduce our first mobile application. And there's a very important one, DS Finder. It was originally designed for IT administrators to find their apps in their Synology in a data center. But we've been adding more and more features. Notably, you're now able to completely install a Synology from A to Z using a mobile device, no PC involved. Not just that, you can apply DSM updates. You can also access the package center, add, remove services. And finally, I think this is quite neat, remote access through Quick Connect can be set up all from a mobile device. So we since 2009, have spent a lot of energy developing these apps. Today, we have 15 of them. The most popular one is, I believe, still DS Photo that I just mentioned. But actually, right behind it is Synology Moments, which we unveiled here in this event last year. What is the difference between DS Photo and Moments? DS Photo is a bit more for professionals, more advanced features. Moments was designed really with simplicity and home users in mind. And notably with the idea of making it smarter at, well, creating albums automatically for you so that you don't have to spend time managing your photo collection. And how did we do that? Well, with deep machine learning. So that's where, based on our large samples of data, we train our models to automate these tasks for you. So obviously there's a timeline mode, but it also featured facial recognition, geolocation, but also, very importantly, that was quite important, being able to detect subjects. So for instance, if all the photos that contained food, restaurants, all then would be automatically brought together into an album. Now, this is not to say you can't find that in Google Photos, for instance, but really what's important here is that you're getting access to these great features, but not surrendering your data to a third party. Everything was all done by the CPU of the Synology. So what are we improving? We're taking Moments beyond sorting out your photos, which is already great, but we also want to allow them to, make your photos look great with two key features. First one is color correction. When you're taking pictures, it's easy to get the right level of exposure wrong. Moments can do that for you. And another one, you can probably guess it, it's angular adjustments if the photo wasn't taken quite straight. So those are some of the key features for mobile users. Now, mobile is a very important trend, but there are also other smart devices out there, notably voice assistants. And actually, this is a market which is growing quite fast, estimated by 2023 to be worth $30 billion. And again, we want to be pioneers in that way to allow you to control and access your data from these voice assistants. We actually already provided support for probably the most popular one out there, Amazon Alexa, last year. You could start playing your music collection on your Synology just by asking Alexa. We're adding two important features. You can now control your calendar. So your Synology calendar, Alexa can add events to it or modify them for you. And another one that I think is quite neat, it's the little LEDs on your Synology that blink at night. Well, if you have it in your bedroom, you can actually, instead of getting up and that's a bit inconvenient, ask Alexa, just dim the lights of the Synology, and it'll be done automatically for you. So that's a nice touch. We're not just supporting Amazon Alexa. There is support for Apple's Siri, Google's Assistant, and, I don't know, maybe some of you often go to China for business trips. Tmall Genie is also on that list. We're going to end there for the DSM and maybe the multimedia aspect of things, and we're going to move on to something really a part of the core of the DSM system. It's data protection. So how are we improving and achieving this? A very important aspect in making sure your data is never at risk is obviously the backup strategy, the disaster recovery, but you should never overlook the actual hard drives that you have in the Synology. Traditionally, our way of reporting would be leveraging the smart test data, or even the more advanced data that some of our partners, such as Seagate, offer. Iron Wolf Health Management, typically, which is integrated right within the UI of the Synology. Now, as great as this is, it tends to be, in a way, a bit, I would say, reactive. And typically, if you don't have something like Iron Wolf Health Management, you're left with the traditional smart test data. So what we want to do is have a more complete solution that leverages not only that data, but the information from the kernel, the information from the memory, the temperature of the hard drives. And what we've been doing is, again, leveraging deep machine learning, building a model that predicts as accurately as possible the lifespan that your hard drive has. So that's very, very important. We'll take a look at a more detailed demo, but that's pretty much what it looks like. You have that threshold in red, and when it goes over, it means that you need to, you still have some time, but you need to start looking into that specific hard drive. So you're going to ask, well, how accurate is it? Based on our testing, out of 10 hard drives that fail, this model is able to detect 9 out of these 10 drives, so a 90% accuracy rate. We want to combine this with another very essential feature, which we're calling real-time data cloning. The idea is to automatically start replacing the hard drive in a case where it's been detected as likely to fail. When would you want to do that? Some people might find that that's not really what you want. You want to have control over that process. Think of a Synology rack that's living in a data center. You can't have your IT guy on site to just jump on the unit, pull out the drive, replace it. So this aspect of automation is really for those type of scenarios. And the idea is, if a hard drive is about to fail, it's been detected, we're going to leverage a global hot spare that you might have in your array and start copying the parity to it, and then you're able to replace the one that's about to fail, and at no point will you be left in a more vulnerable situation with no redundancy. So these are two aspects. What I'm going to do is play you a short video, and you'll be able to see how it all works out in the entire flow. So disk 1 is the one we'll be focusing on. We'll first go to the health info section. So first the overview. Nothing's changed here. It's in the history. That's where you'll be able to see the data, the failure of the probability of failure given by the failure prediction model. What we're going to do first is configure the hot spare and enable the auto replacement. So that's the real-time data cloning for leveraging the hot spare. So that's enabled. Now, what other engineers have done in this test is simulate some bad sectors coming from the hard drive. So that doesn't mean that the hard drive is failing, but it does indicate that there might be something, so it will be reported by DSM. So you can see the notifications on the right-hand side. And taking a look at the status, it's going to go into critical. So traditionally, that's where you had to send your IT guy and start doing something. Here, with the auto replacement enabled, you can see the storage pool has automatically gone into replacing mode, and it's leveraging this global hot spare to bring the redundancy of the hard drive that's about to fail onto that other drive. And if you go back to the history, you can see it's gone over the threshold, and is why it's sending you those notifications. So I hope that gives you a general idea. Really, the value of this is either SMBs who may not have a dedicated IT person there 24/7, or data centers where you might not physically be able to send someone to take action immediately. Now, this is more proactive. Obviously, RAID rebuilds will probably still happen, unfortunately. We've enhanced that in DSM 7. And it's really the way we're doing the RAID rebuild. Traditionally, you would rebuild every single block on the hard drive. Now, if you're not using all of the blocks, what we're going to do now is only rebuild the blocks which are being used. So what is the improvements? So it will really depend on a lot of variables, but in our test, so 3 4-terabyte hard drives in a RAID 5, used at 40%, this brings down the RAID rebuild from 8 hours down to 3 hours. So that's quite considerable. And the overall idea here is, if you're not using the RAIDs, the less usage on the RAID, the faster the RAID rebuild goes. So that's quite neat. So just to recap all that, how are we aiming to introduce a risk-free storage solution? Failure prediction with this model that we've developed, 90% accuracy. Second one is the hard drive replacement. That means that you don't need to have human input to start the copying of the parity. And finally, faster rebuilds by only rebuilding what needs to. Okay, going to move on to another section, more in terms of the management. So if you're an IT admin, I'm sure a lot of this will be of quite big interest to you. And we're going to start with an important aspect, is managing efficiently not just a single Synology NAS, but large clusters, like large fleets of servers. So the app for that is called CMS, Central Management System. It's not brand new. It's actually been around since, I believe, DSM 5, 2014, I believe. We've collected feedback from our users. Notably, let me just explain a few things about CMS. Benefits for an IT admin: you have a single interface of the host to access all of your Synology units, depending on how many you have. But also, quite importantly, it removes the need to apply updates, for instance, individually on the NAS. So you can actually create entire groups of servers, define a policy, and, well, that will automate the task for every single one of the servers within that group. We've enhanced quite a few things, notably for customers with very, very large-scale deployments, like the Chris Group. They're an optical retailer in France. I think they're nearing 1,400 shops, nearly the same number of Synology units. You can imagine that that's not fun to manage individually. First aspect is we've been doing a lot of stress testing on DSM 7 for CMS, and we can now confidently have clusters of up to 10,000 servers hosted on our flagship unit, the FS 3017, which is an all-flash array. So a lot of stress testing gone there. We've also looked to improve the UI, the interface of CMS, and notably, two important aspects, the group management policy. It's been enhanced. Previously, it was all under one tab. Now you have groups and policies separately, so you can create your policy first and start adding the servers much more easily into it. Also, support for customized tasks, so that will also be beneficial to IT admins using CMS. I'm going to move on to a key feature. I know a few people have, how can I put it, IT admins again. It might not be a large amount of our user base, but power users, people who need this will be glad to have that. It's really allowing different levels of management for different users. What's the benefit of admin delegation? Take a team leader. Every time he has a new employee, he might need to give them access to a specific shared folder and therefore be able to control the permissions. Or when someone forgets their password, he needs to be able to reset it for them. Previously, you'd have to give the admin privileges to his account, which means he could actually reboot the server. That's something that might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Now with admin delegation, you can define which sets of the admin privileges can be assigned to a specific account. So it gives you much more flexibility and granularity. Moving forward, another package. Now it's not a new one, Directory Server for Windows Domain. It's actually a package we introduced last year called AD Server. Why are we changing the name? It's not a stupid marketing exercise. It's actually some customers were asking us, is it done by Windows for Synology, or is it a pure Synology package? So now to clarify that, we're calling it Directory Server for Windows Domain, to avoid any confusion. First important enhancement, you can now migrate an AD server on a non-Synology straight onto your piece of Synology kit, so the migration process is streamlined, much easier. Again, we're doing that to encourage people to move to the Synology platform. Second, actually quite related, is the idea of having it as a dual controller. So you can pair your Synology either with another one or another AD server out there, and that gives you redundancy. It gives you a failover, as it will be in dual active controller mode. That is, in a way, a two-way sync. We also have an option for a one-way sync, so we're calling that read-only domain controller. What's the type of application you'll have it for there? Well, let's take the example of Synology. Our headquarters are in Taiwan. We have branches in America, England, in Germany. Every time we log in, we're going to authenticate against the main server, the AD server in Taiwan, which obviously won't be as fast as if we were authenticating locally. So read-only allows you to have an AD server in each subsidiary, cache the data locally, and for end users, only the initial authentication is against the one in HQ, all the subsequent ones are done locally in the subsidiary. So it's much faster. A lot of our customers use our either desktop or rack units. It can be SMBs or even some MSBs. Some put them in data centers. They all have something in common. They trust Synology with their data, and they rely on all the very advanced backup and disaster recovery features that we offer. So much so that some actually use Synology as a nice SCSI or an NFS target for other solutions such as Veeam, for instance. Now, that is obviously completely supported, but as a business, it means that you have one manufacturer providing the hardware, another one the software. That's never ideal. What you want is an integrated solution. So you've probably heard of Active Backup that we are working on, that some parts have actually already been released. I'm going to talk about it. I just want to give you a bit more of a background of what we're developing, and what demand it's serving in the market. First, a trend going from, well, 2 years ago, where most businesses were relying on a physical, an internalized infrastructure. And as you can see in 2018, it's kind of balancing out between physical, virtual, and a cloud approach. That obviously, for an IT admin, means more complexity because the data is, pretty much everywhere. Second, so in addition to the strong growth of data, it's really the complexity for the IT administrator. In 2018, on average, an IT admin, to protect all of these workloads, whether in the cloud or internalized, they require 4.1 backup solutions. And again, 4.1 is a number. It's more complicated than if you had a single one to control everything. So I think you're getting what we're aiming at is providing a single integrated solution with both the hardware and the software provided by Synology for your disaster recovery approach. That will allow you to back up anything from local files on Windows machines, virtual machines, or even servers that you have in your infrastructure, all the way to the cloud, namely Office 365 and Google G Suite that you might be using. I just want to highlight a few key features that are really essential for active backup. First, it's when an employee needs to actually get access to a file he may have deleted by accident or restore a previous version. You don't want him knocking at MIS and bothering them every single time. So we're including a portal. That means that end users can just log into their portal, get access to their data, and work more efficiently. Second is, that's really good for IT admins. If you are protecting a device, like a Windows machine, through active backup, the image is physically on the Synology server, well, you'll be able to use physical to virtual. That means you're leveraging the hypervisor of the Synology called Virtual Machine Manager, and you can power on the image right on the Synology. So very useful for testing, such as a sandbox environment, or even just a temporary disaster recovery solution. Global deduplication is another important part of active backup. So a lot of customers at our workshops earlier this year asked us, well, how efficient is it? We've compared it with other solutions out there that run on Synology, Nakivo notably. We either perform as well or at a higher rate. But I think what speaks even better is the feedback from one of our users who's adopted active backup, Shiseido. They're an international cosmetics company. They had 66 terabytes of data on their servers and workstations. When it arrived on the Synology, when it was backed up there, at the end there was only 17 terabytes left. So that gives you a good idea of the efficiency of the global deduplication. Moving on, you'll want to know, well, how does it compare with the competition? So first, let's talk about physical workloads. This one is actually in beta for another few weeks. It's about to go live. So as it goes live, you'll be able to see we have provided all of the key features that you'll be wanting to compete on that market. Global deduplication, bare metal, volume level restoration, file service recovery, very important, but also things such as, well, I mentioned, instant restoration on Virtual Machine Manager. And that, because it's powered on Synology, is something exclusive to us. Really very key here is no licensing is involved. So we're really eager to bring this to SMBs who in the past might have been, they know they need to keep their data safe, but for budgetary reasons might not be able to do that. So that's a first very important aspect. No licensing involved. Let's take a look at, well, the same aspect before backing up virtual environments. Again, all of the key features are addressed, where it's snapshot-based backups to change block tracking. Again, the file VM instant restoration, very important for VMware environments. And the key thing here is, obviously, first, as I've already mentioned, no licensing involved. But even better is a lot of, if you're going with these other solutions, the hardware isn't included. So there's an additional investment in the hardware, and often it's not low-spec hardware. The fact that it's hosted on a NAS means it's very, very cost-effective. So just in case some of you are a bit confused, where does active backup fit in our a range of backup applications? I know there's quite a few of them, so just to clarify things. In the center, you have the level of the Synology NAS. Right at the top, it's cloud storage. Either cloud storage you're using as a backup or for live editing of documents. And at the bottom, it's all your workstations, your servers for your infrastructure. Any PC, server, virtual machine, that's backed up through Active Backup, and it transforms the Synology into an actual backup appliance. Same for Office 365 or Google G Suite. How do you protect the Synology? Obviously, in a business type of environment, you'll be looking at snapshot replication. That means you put another Synology, preferably off-site, obviously, and you back up the primary one to the secondary one. You'll probably want a third copy of your data. It's quite popular to use the cloud, so we're still maintaining our existing options to back up to Microsoft Azure, Amazon services. However, if you want an all-in-one solution, that's kind of the idea of Active Backup, you can use Synology C2, which we introduced here last year, and has actually proved very, very popular with our customer base. Okay, hopefully that makes it all clear. I've got a very important update because I know lots of people have been asking for support for SharePoint. So SharePoint will be supported through Active Backup for Office 365, allowing you to, well, pretty much replicate it to your Synology. Our devs are working on it, so you'll be able to expect it in an upcoming version. But I just wanted to share that with you because I know it's a very popular feature. Just to wrap it up, Active Backup Suite, free software, no licensing involved, allows to transform your Synology into a backup appliance to replicate, to protect anything from PCs to virtual machines, servers, and Office 365 or G Suite. So, we're going to move on to an exciting piece of hardware that's coming out, and it's going to be very focused around resilience. Now, if you're like this guy, you like to have a bit of an adrenaline rush, you might be very happy to have a single rope, but if it fails, you're pretty much dead. That's where the... It's true. And that's actually an interesting saying by the US Navy SEALs. I think it resumes it pretty well. 2 is 1, 1 is none. You can't ever rely on a single component, a single piece of hardware, because that means that sooner or later you're going to be screwed. So, how have we addressed that in the past? Typically, for our desktops, the possibility to pair it up with a UPS. For our rack devices, you had the RP, so the redundant power options. Obviously, ideally for better redundancy, you'd actually go for a HA cluster. That means you pair 2 identical Synology units. One is active, one is passive, so great for hosting a website and never having too much downtime. We had a special unit around the HA. It was called RC18015XS+. It was a dual controller. Idea was you had only the controllers duplicated, and redundancy was achieved via RAID on the actual storage. Now, as great as these solutions are, and we'll still be investing and developing in them, they remain active-passive. And when you want to be serious at tackling the high-end enterprise segment, you have to have something along the lines of a dual controller with typically a dual active service. So that's why we're working on this dual controller called UC300, UC for Unified Controller. Don't want to get that wrong. Obviously, it's going to be designed as a dedicated iSCSI service. And I just want to give you a rough idea of the key specs so that you see where it fits in our product range. So 2 controllers, that means 2 CPUs, which will be Intel Xeons, the D1521. They're quad-core. The amount of memory, 16 gigs by default, scalable up to 64. And what does that give? Well, in terms of the random write IOPS, which is a very good measure, you'll be over 100,000. So what makes it different from the existing offerings that we have? It typically falls within the XS Plus or the Flash Station ranges. First one, it's the first Synology unit which will feature SATA DOM. What's the benefit there? The DSM operating system will not be written on the hard drives. It will have its dedicated flash memory. That means no more installation, much faster when you perform a DSM update. Second, 4 dedicated SSD slots for SSD caching, dual protection on all of the key components, and importantly, NTB, so that is non-transparent bridge. What's the idea here? Well, instead of having a network-based heartbeat, it's a PCIe-based one, which means that in the case of a failover, it's much faster. And also, between the time when the controller was actually going to write data to the hard drives, there's a risk that you'll either lose that or there will be errors on the writes. NTB avoids that problem. You may already have seen it. We have one just over there. So during the break, don't hesitate to go and speak to, have a look at it and speak to our tech team. But basically, if you take a look at the controller, you'll be able to see all the components, notably the redundant SATA DOM just there. And if you open the top, you'll be able to see the 4 dedicated SSD, slots for SSD caching. Now, we're going to show you a quick test, which is in a real type of scenario. Just to give you a bit of background on what we've done. So on each controller, it's dual active. You have Synology, a nice cozy LUN. It's in a VMware environment, 4 VMs running on each. And rather than just doing an iometer test and just having it as a file server, what we're doing here is we're running a few different services. So you'll be able to see upper left-hand side, there's a web service. You've got code compilation, log collection services running, and obviously an iometer stress test. So let's start playing the video and take a look at, well, how the failover works. You can see the services running. You have the IOPS right at the bottom, hovering between 50,000 and 60,000. And in the center, we're logged into controller A. And in a few seconds, well, you'll be able to see our engineer is going to unplug controller A, and let's see how, how it performs. OK, pull out controller A. You can take a look at the IOPS, down to 0. So we're starting the clock on the actual failover. And what we're aiming at here is, again, for all these virtualization environments, OK, way further from 30 seconds, just over 11 seconds. So quite important here, not just using it as a file server. We were running it in a proper real case scenario with quite a few services running on it. So let's quit this. The UC300, I think you can imagine, it's not just going to complete our existing product range. It's very important. It's a breakthrough model for us because it allows us to tackle that enterprise market with not an active passive, but a dual active controller solution. So, nearly the end. We've been focusing on DSM, where we're taking the platform, the roadmap for 2019. Key things to remember if you forget everything. Deep machine learning, that's a very important technology. We're leveraging deep machine learning, not just for home apps like Moments, but also for the fundamentals of DSM. Think of that failure prediction model, to make your arrays more reliable. And second point, enhanced data security. So typically, that is the active backup applications that we've been talking about to make sure that you can easily protect all of the workloads in your IT environment. And finally, on the topic of resilience and robustness, not just in terms of managing large scale solutions with the Windows directory server or the CMS, it's also in terms of the hardware with this very important UC300 that we're working on, which will offer a dual active controller solution. So that's it for my section. I believe we will be having a 20 to 30-minute break. I can't see Emma here, so, in 30 minutes, we'll be back with Ryan, who will be telling you a bit more about some DSM features, but also in terms of our latest routers and surveillance applications. So, see you in 30 minutes.